So, my name is Khristian Saint, and this is my thesis presentation titled Bridging the Gap, Evaluating the Impact of GEMP on Student Success in Medical Education. To get us started, I wanted to talk about what GEMP is. GEMP is a pipeline program targeted at addressing the physician shortage of economically disadvantaged students in the state of Texas. It is a state-funded and state-run program that's been in effect for about the last 2 decades. GEMP offers mentorship, financial support, academic counseling, and support at a student's undergraduate at university in order to guarantee admissions into medical school, which they do also offer. So some examples of resources or academic support that GEMP provides is that they do MCAT resource prep, which is MCAT is a medical college admissions test, which aspiring medical students have to take in order to enter into medical school. They, like I mentioned already, provide undergraduate or home university support in the form of a JFD, which is a GEMP faculty director, which is a member of the student's undergraduate faculty, that they're meant to be a one-on-one relationship that helps support the student while at undergraduate and transitioning into the matriculation process in medical school. And finally, one of the other major things that GEMP offers is the ability to attend 2 summer internships at Texas medical colleges, where students are exposed to both the curriculum at the school, the city, and the people of the different schools' locations that they're at in order to orient them for future graduation, as well as the faculty and other preparatory resources for the admissions process into medical school. So, in order to look into the GEMP program and evaluate it into the terms of student experiences, first it's important to look at what successful pipeline programs offer. The successful pipeline programs offer very clearly set and outlined expectations that they publish. They offer mentorship to their students in order to make sure that there's a seamless process of matriculation into medical school. They offer academic support to their students, both in undergraduate and in medical education. And they offer financial support, especially in programs like GEMP that are directed towards economically disadvantaged students. So now, specifically what I investigated was the current GEMP students' experience in terms of those core components that I mentioned previously, which are mentorship, academic support, and financial assistance. And I compared those experiences against the expectations that incoming students had in order to generate a research question of how do the experiences of GEMP scholars align with the program's objectives in terms of mentorship, financial support, and academic preparation. So, in order to answer my research question, I conducted 3 semi-structured interviews that were virtual, where I asked questions that were geared towards assessing those same core components of GEMP and those markers of a successful pipeline program. I investigated students' experiences with financial support, academic preparation, and mentorship, as well as their expectations coming into and leaving the GEMP program, as well as their sense of preparation for medical education as they matriculate into the next phase of their learning process. In order to do this, I used thematic coding in my analysis of the 20 to 30-minute interviews. So, what I found was that students expected guaranteed admission to medical school, and this is something that I expected to find because it's one of the most highly publicized elements of the GEMP program. Typically, when GEMP goes out and conducts publicity, or does media, or puts things out online through emails, this is one of the first things that you'll find mentioned, is that they guarantee admission into medical school. One of the other expectations is that they would receive no financial burden from their participation both in GEMP, but specifically in their summer internships, because this program is geared towards economically disadvantaged students. that academic resources would be introduced by JAMP and would adequately support them in their participation in undergraduate education as well as their matriculation into medical education. That they would receive mentorship during their participation in the program, both at their undergraduate university, through both upperclassmen and through their JAMP faculty director or JFD, as well as receiving mentorship opportunities by current medical students and staff at medical schools during their attendance at internship, both 1 and 2. And finally, that their participation in the internships would prepare them for medical school, since it is such an integral component to completing the JAMP program. So, in terms of JAMP students' experiences, a lot of students entered into JAMP, as I already said, with the expectation that there would be guaranteed admission to medical school. One of the most repeated experiences that I had repeated to me during my interviews with students was that there was a lot more to the admissions process, even though it was guaranteed than they had originally thought. A lot of students use verbiage such as easy, boom, done, and that they thought that it was going to be a seamless and conducted process, that they would just be able to enter into medical school. And that the reality of that was interviews, application, the MCAT, and each step of the process that they were aware of in advance was different once they got there, and that guaranteed admission only took them so far. Students reported that participating in the program came at a financial loss to them, specifically in the participation in the internships. A lot of students reported a financial loss in both food, travel, and sometimes in the hotel expenses that it took in order to be able to travel between internships. Multiple students reported losses upwards of $500 across multiple of those expenses. Not all of the academic resources that were provided to students were reported to be useful. Specifically, students reported that the Med-Ed curriculum, which is the medical education supplementation program that JAMP recently introduced, had mixed results. Some students said that they found it helpful. Other students said that they found it to be a waste of time on the advice of their mentors in the program. Students received Kaplan MCAT prep. There was also mixed reviews on that. A lot of students reported that the books were helpful to them. Specifically, one of them reported that because he was a business major, that he found those books, but that other students in the program did not find the books helpful or any of the other resources that Kaplan provided helpful. Students reported that the other general resources provided to them, like UWorld, which is a question bank for MCAT prep, as well as the preparatory instruction in medical terminology provided in the internship, was also mixed results. So the theme of the academic resources is of mixed results. Some students, depending on preference, found it helpful, and some resources ubiquitously were unhelpful to students. A lot of students did experience really important and fundamental mentorship opportunities, but that the mentorship they received and the degree to which it helped them was largely dependent on the student's temperament and their own ability to go and pursue those interactions. A lot of students reported that they were able to maintain their connection with their mentors after the internship, and that they were able to benefit a lot in terms of preparation for medical school and the application process through their mentors. But some other students that I spoke with, as well as the same students that were reporting successful mentorship, reported that they observed other students being less successful due to those same temperamental reasons. And finally, that the student experience at internship was highly unstandardized. A lot of students reported that they did not see that the internships at the particular medical schools were conducted following JAMP's published guidelines, For example, GEM published an objective that students that did not pass their MCAT for their second internship would receive set-aside and structured time in order to review their MCAT and help prepare for their retake of the exam. Every student that I interviewed, as well as through experiences that they heard secondhand, reported that they did not receive either an adequate amount of time or any time at all in order to review and study for their MCAT, and that the events that should have been made not mandatory were instead mandatory for those same students. A part of the evaluation process in interviewing students was questions geared towards these core components, and a lot of students had suggestions or things that they would offer as alternatives or fixes in order to improve the program, as well as some directed questions specifically evaluating student preparedness and their suggestions towards the program. And so this is the main bulk of those suggestions. So as I've already talked about, there was a lack of standardization between a lot of the student experiences, and a lot of the suggestions followed that same theme of fixing the standardization process. Specifically, students said that they would like to see follow-through on the expectations set by the program administration at all levels. There is a standardized, published list of objectives that are given to GEM students and that are given to the administrators at GEM, and that are given to the medical school administrators, and that are given to the GEM faculty directors at the student university. But there is a disparity in follow-through between how each one of those levels of administration actually execute those objectives. And one of those improved suggestions was to add a system of standardization for those things. Still following that same thing of standardization is that a lot of students reported that they wished that the internship experience would become standardized. Both in the example that I already gave of MCAT preparedness and study time set aside, there were also a lack of standardization in the types of meals offered, in the types of free time that were supplied to students, and the frequency of those things. A lot of students reported that the calendars that were supplied to them during the internship were not followed, which led to a lot of uncertainty in how time would be spent, and made it very difficult for students in internships that required, for example, cooking their food to structure that time and maintain a healthy diet. And finally, students reported that their undergraduate experience was unstandardized as well, that they had wished that some of the same resources that were offered to some of their peers that they heard about would have been offered to them as well. Students reported that at their undergraduate experience, they did not receive monthly meetings with their JFDs, that they did not receive upperclassmen support, and that they did not receive the amount of support heading into application preparation that some of their peers did, and that maybe not necessarily they would want the same exact support as them, but they would want minimum standards set that could be accomplished and enforced across all universities that are participating in GEM. The other theme of suggestions that were given by students and the students reported was that they wished communication would be, was that the introduction of an administration of academic resources would be communicated to them in a both timely and consistent manner. A lot of the time that GEM has introduced medical education resources to students, they reported that it was introduced too early by accident, that it was supplied as a kind of a gotcha where the bomb was dropped without much lead up, or that there was a vote by the GEM Council to introduce a possible new resource, but not that that resource was going to be launched for this current entry year, nor for this current student group with requirements and expectations. A lot of students mentioned the internship needing to be standardized in order to improve their experience. One of the things that I chose to separate with that was an equitable food and travel stipend, because a lot of students specifically mentioned that they wished that the travel stipend was scaled, because there were many students that, let's say, lived in the city of the internship and received $200 for travel, And then there were other students traveling across all of Texas for 9 hours that received the same $200. And a lot of students reported that they would have liked to receive a scaled amount depending on where they were coming from and where they were going. And that same principle applied to the food and meal cards that were offered. Finally, in the same vein of standardization for communication, a lot of students reported having to hunt in emails or to go through secondhand or to have to ask and call directly to the JAMP Office of Administration. Lots of students reported that they would find helpful and beneficial a clearinghouse for up-to-date communication specifically directed at JAMP scholars so that they could find information on guidelines and expectations very easily and all in one place, and then everything would be verified information instead of secondhand. So to conclude, I wanted to give some final thoughts, and I wanted to give a summary of the biggest finding in my research. The first final thought that I wanted to give was that this is an evaluation of JAMP, and some of these are criticisms of JAMP, but that every student that I talk to and every student that I have personal experience with, as well as myself, has the general sentiment of overwhelming gratitude, and that every cost or loss that came with the program, they were happy to pay because of the large opportunity that they were offered in order to participate in the program. Under the theme of a lot of the suggestions that I received, even the ones that I mentioned here, is that JAMP has done a really good job of getting the right people and the right pieces of the puzzle into place, and that now these are suggestions and evaluation of implementation, not an introduction to new resources. And that the biggest complaint throughout this entire process was of the Kaplan MCAT prep. And they recently just replaced that with the Jack Weston program that has been a lot better. And so it now truly is a method of implementation instead of replacements. And finally, that the student undergraduate experience is one of the biggest factors of the program, even though it wasn't necessarily mentioned at the beginning when I was doing research into the pipeline program. Students, no matter which core component I spoke to them about, and no matter the suggestions that they supplied to me, all moved back towards the student undergraduate experience. They wish that they had received more support by their JFD. They wish that they had an upperclassman to provide mentorship early on. They wish that they had received more clarity and communication from their JFDs. That was maybe a filter or a sieve for the second-hand information that they're receiving in group chats, and that a lot of the fixes that JAMP needs to do are things that could be suggested and are supposed to be suggested by the JFDs because they're the representation of the students at the home university with the joint campus.
Are there questions for Khristian on this interesting presentation? Is there other forms of JAMP or different equivalencies in other states that are leveraged with single-parent countries?
So there's no direct equivalency within other states of JAMP, but what a lot of, in Texas is one of the major hubs for medical schools in the United States, actually. We've got 18 in the state, both private and public. What a lot of schools will do in other states is they will have internal programs like JAMP. For example, a lot of Texas medical schools, like A&M's medical school, has an internal program with similar requirements to JAMP, but it's not geared toward economically disadvantaged students. And students that are enrolled in the undergraduate have the opportunity to apply on a similar timeline as JAMP to receive similar benefits. And in fact, a lot of the time, the JAMP students and the school's internal students are merged together into a larger group, providing similar resources.
Have you shared this, or will you share this with JAMP?
I plan to, yeah.
Okay, good. I think that's, that's what I was thinking. This is so valuable for students, but also for them. Questions? What is next for you? You're about to graduate. Can you tell us what you're...
Sure. So I, as part of the JAMP program, was was accepted into Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in Fort Worth. And so I'm matriculated to that. The class is in July.
Congratulations, Khristian. What are your feelings about Fort Worth?
That I've never been there before, but that I now have an apartment that I've settled on and going to figure it out.
I like Fort Worth for what it's worth.
Awesome.
Congratulations, Khristian. Great job. And before our final thing, I know people coming in, great word to get is that one of the really exciting things I think that happens today is that our graduating seniors get presented by their mentor, in this case, Professor Johnson with the cord and stole. And this is in recognition of everything that Khristian has done as an honor student here. Of course, this amazing work, but also just everything he's brought in the classroom, out of the classroom as an amazing member of our community. Like I said before, I think we met for coffee your first year and you had questions about JAM, and he's just the kind of student you want, the kind of student who comes to the supposed experts who don't know and goes out and finds out everything on his own. That's a skill that'll carry you so far. I'm just so excited for you, and I hope you'll wear this with pride at graduation. I'm sure Professor Johnson would love to see.
To piggyback on what you were saying, I had Khristian last semester in thesis prep, so I've been working with you almost a full school year. And when we were trying to brainstorm ideas for what you would focus on, I don't remember what you were thinking about first, but as soon as this idea came into your brain, you were full steam ahead and basically had his entire kind of vision for the research already mapped out from the get-go. So it's been really great working with you in your drive and just your process, and you're just easy to work with because you are so driven, and so we appreciate that. But I know just when he was analyzing all of his interview transcripts, I think I had told you at the beginning of the semester, that's my favorite part, digging in and getting into the data, and I think you were whatever, we'll see. And then you did. You had to pull yourself out of the analysis process and just say, okay, that's enough, I have to stop because I have to move on to the next stage. So we're very proud of you, and good luck with that school. That'll be a whole other journey. So.